All right. Hello, everyone. This is DJ here, the head of marketing at Entytle. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to folks who are joining today from various parts of the world. With that, let me go ahead and introduce the speaker for the day, Vivek Joshi. Vivek is the CEO and founder of Entytle with decades of experience working on both sides of the industry equation. He's passionate about all things installed base and also about simplifying install base workflows to give customer facing OEM teams an opportunity to do more with less. He is also the founder of Industry Next Community, which is designed to help industrial leaders share and learn from each other. With that, let me hand this over to Vivek.
Good morning, everybody. Good afternoon for those of you in the East Coast and Europe, and good evening to those of you calling from India. Welcome. This is the first webinar I'm doing after a long time, so I'm actually looking forward to the conversation, looking forward to seeing what questions may come up during the course of the next 30 minutes or so. As DJ said, for those of you who don't know me, I'm the founder and CEO of Entytle, and I started this company after about 25, 30 years of experience in the industrial sector. And the way I always describe it to people is like, I was one of you in the sense that I was a classic operating guy in the industrial company. And I started this company to solve very specific problems that I faced in the course of building an aftermarket and service business. And so what I'm going to do today is kind of share with you some of the things that we've learned along the way in terms of analytics and specifically AI. And as we go along, please feel free to ask questions in the Q&A box that you see out there or in the chat section as you see out here. For those of you who don't know about Entytle, we're basically an install-based selling platform. We call ourselves an install-based automation software. Our vision is to become, quote unquote, all things install-based solution for industrial OEMs. And it's everything from intelligence prospecting, specific marketing campaigns, inspection workflows, building a portal, and any other integrations that may matter to those of us in the industrial business. And we're a classic software as a service company, and we serve industrials all over the world, especially in Europe and the US. And these range from $100 million companies all the way to multi-billion dollar companies. So we've got lots of experience doing this thing for many years now. In the context of what today's session is about, I always like to kind of distill it down to just a few things that I think are important today. And for me, as if I was in your shoes, what I thought I'd like to convey to you is the following. You know, whether we like it or not, AI is upon us. There's a ton of stuff going on in the world around us, and I think it's important for us to see what we can harness to our own benefits. Secondly, don't just do it for the sake of doing AI and checking off a box for somebody in corporate. That's not the reason you should do it. There's things you should think about before you go after it. There are things you should worry about before you jump with both feet, 1 foot, 1 hand, whatever it might be, into the big lake out there. And then lastly, we're going to kind of walk through some of what we call how-to AI, you know, the things you should think about and do as you get into this process, right? But most of all, if there's one thing I want you to take away, is just don't be afraid. You got to start somewhere, and there's ways to get about it without risking the company and B, risking your reputation from doing these things, right? So without further ado, I'm going to get into the heart of the presentation here, right? So clearly, this session was inspired by the chaos and madness we hear about ChatGPT, right? Probably every one of us on this call today have done something with ChatGPT, whether we like it or not, be it a marketing prompt, be it, you know, let me know about something. And this has really taken the world by storm. You know, I've been around a couple of years now, if you may, been around the block a couple of times. And the last time I saw such madness, if you may, was back in the early 90s or maybe 95. With the advent of the browser, right? When everybody was talking the browser, deploying it, and so on and so forth. So that is the last time I saw this madness. But AI has a lot more to do than just ChatGPT. In fact, I'd argue that many of us have been practicing AI and experiencing AI before ChatGPT. You know, I always like to give a little example when I think about AI, but years ago, and I don't think I see that anymore on the Apple iPhone. I used to go to the gym when I was fitter and younger and fitter. Go to the gym pretty regularly. And there used to be the case where almost every Saturday morning at a certain time, I can't remember, 10 or 11 o'clock in the morning, I would head over to the gym. And the moment I sat in my car and turned it on, my phone connected with the car, invariably, if not all the time, a little message would pop up. 11 minutes to XYZ address. Traffic looks light today. And I always wonder, what the heck was that about? And then now, if you look back towards it and say, you know what, that was some form of AI. Fundamentally, the phone, the GPS, whatever the data, had recognized that every Saturday morning at around 10 or 11 o'clock, I got into my car, connected the phone to the car, and I was going to a certain place every Saturday morning. right? It is amazing. It was recognizing patterns and kind of giving me some input or giving me some advice as to what is going on. And that's kind of how I think about AI as well. And that was the early days of the hype cycle, if you may. Gartner, who always likes to put out these hype cycles, put this AI hype cycle out last year. In the early days in 14 and 15, when I first started Entytle, we were clearly on this crazy upswing innovation trigger and the peak of inflated expectations. We really thought it was all about making our life easy and magic, and things would just happen automatically. The fact of the matter is we all went through different emotions along the way and went to the classic peak all the way to the trough of disillusionment and all the way to the bottom when nobody cared about it. And now we're kind of coming back, right? We're beginning to start seeing a lot more customers asking about things. Clearly, the ChatGPT revolution is really galvanizing a lot of ideas and thoughts, but we're beginning to start seeing that. And I helpfully put together this little box out here for intelligent applications, which is where we think there's a lot of value for most of you to kind of think about how to apply AI, how to apply these different techniques that make up AI for your business benefits. And that's kind of where we think the market's headed, where the technology is headed today, right? So I think we're on this upswing now. There's a lot of things going on which are going to be beneficial. But I want to talk to you about how we think about this stuff. As you think about AI and AI in general, I think of this in the context of the progression of analytics, if you may, right? We've all lived through this. There's a whole notion of diagnostics or looking back and tell us what happened, right? Understanding what happened, kind of understand the dashboards and so on and so forth, learn from the past. The second one is what we call predictive analytics that gives some insights on what could happen, the forecasting, this, that, and the other, like all kinds of things that that we've all grown up with. And finally, the whole notion of prescriptive, right? What actions can we take? What are the different patterns you're seeing? Where are things going to be? And therefore, what should I ask somebody to go do? These are the kinds of things that I see that are beginning to start popping up everywhere, but there's a progression. And I don't think you can kind of go from nothing to the most sophisticated level, which is AI and prescriptive stuff, without having at least some experience in the progression in the early days as well, right? So when you start thinking about it, there's a lot of techniques that can be involved and can be applied. And before we kind of untangle this word cloud, maybe what we can do, DJ, if all the questions, or many people have answered questions, maybe let's take a look at see what people have responded to. So do you want to stop the poll, or should I hit the end poll button and see where the results are?
Sure, let me go ahead and do it. I'm doing it. So yeah, just ended the poll. I'm sharing the results, so everybody should start seeing it.
So as you can see, when people think of AI, the first thing that comes to mind is ChatGPT. So clearly OpenAI is doing a damn good job, and Microsoft doing a damn good job in terms of being able to make this thing like a thing, right? So ChatGPT, autocomplete's a good example. Generative AI is another ChatGPT variation, but or generative AI is part of ChatGPT. Data science is clearly what people think about as well as when you think about AI. That's great. Good to see that. That's a good hint for what may be coming forward. The second thing is a complete journey. Okay, nobody is living and breathing AI, which is not surprising. People are experimenting heavily. A quarter of you think your companies experiment heavily. A lot of people are about a third roughly 38%, exploring or contemplating, which is again not surprising, and that's very consistent with the experience we have. And in fact, I'd share with you a preview of what you're going to see in the next few slides, is kind of giving you a more sane-eyed view of the world in terms of how we think you can progress on this journey as well. And when you start thinking of what people are using AI for, is BI and analytics. Okay, not surprising, very, very common. Sales, 0.25%. Aftermarket, 38%. That's pretty impressive. And service, and marketing. Yeah, that's actually pretty good. And product design, that's fascinating. So it's an interesting mix of things. There's no one overwhelming or dominating thing except BI and analytics, which is invariably what we see, which is actually good, but which means people are there in the progression and turning this thing going. So good. I'm going to stop sharing. DJ, maybe at some point we can cut and paste these things and stick them on the back of the slide before we share this with before we share the deck with people. So good to see that. I've stopped sharing this thing. So there's lots of techniques we can use, but the way we think about this progression into the AI journey also is, like I mentioned, this is not about being a wild-eyed, crazy person trying to do everything. We think there's a progression around this. And I think our experience that we've had over the last 8 years in building this company up really informs what I'm going to share with you in the next, what we're called point of view, right? First and foremost, we've done over 50 implementations, maybe even more than that. We've processed like hundreds of millions of records, maybe even a couple of billion at this point, considering how much data we get from certain customers. We've got thousands of users providing us feedback in both in terms of what works, what doesn't work, and kind of helping us refine the algorithms as well. And more importantly, there's successes and failures that dictate or that inform us in terms of how we think we should go forward. So with that, I'm not going to go down very specifically down the techniques that you saw on the previous page, but I'm going to really talk about how we think we should kind of think about the AI journey. And like everything else, we have our framework of applying AI for industrials, and it's a very simple framework. It's 5 steps, and we put this in a little circle because it's iterative, and it goes around the circle and comes back to it, right? So there's some very simple things we think we ought to be thinking about as you go through this journey. And I'm going to share with you over the next few minutes how I think this is going to apply for you and how I think you can benefit from it as well. So the way we think about the first things are like, hey, we need to kind of assess where you are. By the way, I'm going to address only this notion of AI for industrial, but specifically I'm going to talk about in the context of the aftermarket, which is really our raison d'etre, as we say, right? This is exactly why Entytle is formed, and this is why we live every day, is to think about aftermarket. So first and foremost, before you go anywhere, please assess where you are. We've seen so many people who want to get off to the right side without having either the people nor the process to go and be successful. So first and foremost, assess where you are. Be clear-eyed, be very honest with yourselves, because if you're not, it's going to be lots of tears of unhappiness as you get to this journey, right? I'd say to you that when we talk to companies, when we assess where our customers are, when we first start with them, many of them are between 1 and 2, if you may, right? Which is really realistic. And I think we saw that in terms of the survey. People are beginning to dabble into it. I think there's a right answer in some ways where you are. But people are between 1 and 2. And I think, therefore, if you're between 1 and 2 stages, levels 1 and 2, kind of tune your expectations accordingly, tune your investments accordingly, right? Don't go crazy and start doing chat GPT, because trust me, the value just won't be there, right? So that's good to see. So first, start with assessing where you are. Secondly, when you start thinking about proactive selling and you think about in the framework of your maturity, proactive selling is hard, by the way. Proactive selling and service is really, really hard, right? First and foremost, almost every one of you is small, tiny teams compared to how big the opportunity is and how big your install base is. Oh, by the way, it's not just the install base is big, but it's very diverse, and your bills and materials and your products are complex. So the ability to be proactive in a very systematic and very smart manner is hard as heck, right? So it's really, like I always say, it's easier said than done, right? You can't kind of think of this as a whole thing. So when you look at this process, when you look at the install base, and you look at how big the opportunity could be, you have to start picking your spots. So we've always used this framework with our customers, saying, look, think about the use cases, think about what you want to get done, and just pick maybe 2, maybe 3 at the most. You can't go down this whole menu board and say, I want this, 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 and this, and want to get the first 6 things done. Start small, start simple, make sure you set yourself up for success. So pick 1 or 2 of these use cases, be it for your sales side or service side or marketing, either, it doesn't matter. Just pick no more than 1 or 2 or 3 to start getting on this thing. So while you want to engage across the board, pick 2 or 3. When you do that, you're going to start recognizing that what you had all these days and even today is what I would call tribal knowledge, which is the veterans, guys like me who've been around for 20, 30 years in a company or around the industry, kind of know where the skeletons are hidden, kind of know what's behind those closed doors, and they kind of help guide what the company ought to do. But what you're trying to do with AI, what you're trying to do with data science is really start institutionalizing insights at scale, right? I didn't put this slide earlier, but when I think of AI, I think of a pattern recognition process that allows you to kind of create insights and decision guiding, if you may, right? So when I'm trying to institutionalize this whole process, you really need to have really good, accurate, and really good precision, if you may, accuracy and precision in your outputs. But to do that, you need really, really good training data. Now, the whole notion of training is so unique that people don't understand that AI isn't just about pointing some algorithms at some data and letting it run amok. There's a ton of work that needs to get out in training these algorithms in terms of supervised learning, unsupervised learning. There's so many different techniques I'm going to talk about in a moment as well. But you really need to have this good training data which means that one of the first things you got to do is start looking at a data landscape. And guess what? This picture we see everywhere, every day. We talked to a prospect the other day who's really interested in deploying this technology for their install base and aftermarket revenue. And the sad part is that even their IT team doesn't know their true landscape. The IT team doesn't really understand what's hidden where. First and foremost, there's multiple generations of the ERP system. There's all these different things in field service, CRM, marketing, spreadsheets, access databases. Yes, there's such a thing as access databases, for those of us who are old enough to remember that. And the problem, it is one big holy mess. And every aspect of the process today is manual, right? So if you're starting to kind of build some AI models, you really need to sort through this mess quickly. And most companies candidly aren't set up for that. And so one of the biggest things you ought to pay attention to is the data quality framework. We have this thing called data quality engine. You can use a whole bunch of other technologies and tools out there. There's a lot of things out there. We've built one purpose-built, if you may, for manufacturing. So we understand the data models, we understand the data systems, and we can process things quickly. But please, first and foremost, get your data house in order. Organize it, cleanse it, prepare it. So when your AI models are ready, and we talked about some of the models earlier, they are pointing at the right data and get me trained on the right and clean data. Create a single source of truth so they can all live off the same engine that you care about, right? So that's really, really important. And there's a whole bunch of different steps we've talked about out here in terms of what you can do. But this is probably 70% of the effort. We always tell our customers that, look, we'll go through this whole process and in a deployment or an implementation, 60-70% of this process is all about getting data ready. Because if the data is not ready, if the data is not clean, the models fail, right? There's too much noise in the signal, as we would say in engineering, right? So that's the first part you should do. The next thing you can do is then start applying these techniques. And over the years, by the way, we started this company 8-9 years ago now. And almost from the beginning, we've been applying these techniques to all the data, right? So it's everything from the data prep piece of it, kind of deduplication, cleansing, understanding what's going on. There's a lot of AI and machine learning techniques we've been applying over the years. And you have to start doing this on a systematic basis. You got to start learning from small implementations and making them bigger. Look, I'm a former consultant, management consultants, and when they make fun of consultants of having 2x2 matrices, they're actually right. The 2x2 matrix that I've always functioned on, which is really relevant out here as well, is the complexity of data, low to high, and the complexity of models, low to high. I would argue that you should really start in the low quadrant. Make it really simple, get some quick wins, and start doing it. So you can learn from all these different techniques and see how they work. As you start making progress in some of these techniques, to start making it more complex, either on the model side or get more data, right? So decide which axis you want to move in and then start going from there. And then the process is actually pretty straightforward if you understand data science, if you understand AI and ML techniques. It takes a really good trained engineer to do this stuff, but there's a lot of things out there that you can apply to yourself. Segmentation is the biggest process of clustering, is one of the probably foundational steps you do in AI. You can apply that. You can apply that for business uses like loyalty, understanding cohorts and behaviors. Then you can start doing things like supervised models and unsupervised models for different techniques for understanding, patterns of behavior. Right? Pattern matching is a big deal in AI related techniques. And then you can go up from there. And there's so many different techniques out there. I don't want to go name drop, if you may, right? But the idea is that you can start doing this. And we've done this now across hundreds of millions of records over time. And so we've got tons of experience doing this, and we're happy to share with you some more inside knowledge, if you may, in terms of how to apply this. So get the data clean, apply the knowledge. And then there's these techniques that I talked about. They can really start creating some real value for you, right? So creating cohorts and understanding how customers are loyal, right? Understanding loyal cohorts, not loyal cohorts, and deciding how to address it. Understanding how to look at the purchasing behavior to understand buying patterns, which kind of gives you a proxy for part failure rates, right? It's a little known, little kept secret from our side that we actually look at purchase rates to understand how your parts are failing, because most people don't have those databases or data sets in terms of understanding part reliabilities. You can start mining this using supervised learning techniques with lots of back testing. You can start looking at different things of propensity to buy, right? So there's so many different techniques you can apply for very specific end results that you care about that's out there, right? So this is not This is not a black box science. This is something that somebody with a reasonably logical mind, with a reasonable end goal in mind, can start applying these techniques to this aspect, this opportunity. And so when you get through this process, we've gone here. Like I said, many of our customers start between level 1 and 2. You start implementing and start getting some customer success stories, and you start winning, and then you start seeing a progression from level 1 to level 2, level 2 to level 3. Candidly, we've not seen too many people at level 4, which is like nirvana in my mind in terms of trying to do all these things here. It's very complex. It takes a lot of change management, a lot of upskilling, reskilling, whatever you want to call it. That's a big goal. But if you can get from level 2 to level 3, that's a big deal. But even if you start making progress from level 1 to level 2, there's so many things to kind of build upon that you can go forward from there, right? So you start addressing these things in a systematic way. And then we go back to the rinse and repeat. So you pick one, say, for example, you wanted to get, modifications and upgrades, or you want to create a specified targeted hunting list. You did that, you address the results, your people are good, your process is good, data and software is good. Now go back and learn on some other applications, some other use cases, right? So this is not this is not rocket science in some ways. This is the fundamentals of implementation, deployment. Start small, start winning, and start growing from there. And so that's what we always prescribe to our customers, which is, look, pick 1 or 2 use cases, get really good at them, then start making complexity more, start things making more complex, and start winning from there, and then keep going, right? So the idea is to start building on this base of learnings that you have. And then when we get going from this process, you come back to the same 5-step framework, which is, okay, assess, define, prepare, apply, learn, right? So that's kind of how we think about it. I kind of went through some of these techniques quickly. I was trying to be mindful of your time. It's 11:25 here on the Central Time Zone. With that, I am going to stop and see what questions you may have. And I think there's a couple of questions here. The favorite product, favorite question. Are you thinking of ChatGPT as part of your product? I would love to say yes, and the answer is maybe. And DJ, are you going to answer the question, or is it going to be Lalit going to answer the question?
I think it's Lalit. Lalit, over to you.
I can take that one. Yeah, interesting question. So I would say that, yes, ChatGPT is giving us a lot of idea, but we have been using a lot of technology behind them already. Like what Vivek also alluded to, that we have a purpose data model, and what we do is that we reflect those data models basically into multiple other formats to make search easier and things like that. So you can fetch any data point very easily. We also have aspects of AI where I would roughly put it in the category of generative AI, where we can do all prescriptions kind of things, basically apply some heuristics over the current data sets and figure out that what kind of prescriptions can be generated out of them. But yes, we are very closely looking into many other things, and we have ideas, and we are continuously working on them. And basically, we really want to see that how. So we are very purpose built for the industrial world, and that's where we want to really bring all these technologies and make it very, very useful for our customers. Yeah, Vivek,
Great.
I guess.
Thank you. The second question was, have you seen customers use this AI strategy and techniques? The short answer is yes, right? So when I said to you, we started this company 8 years ago, the whole notion of prescriptive selling, the whole notion of recommendations and so on and so forth has been in practice, has been in implementation with our customers for many years now, probably 4 or 5 years now. And you'd be not surprised in many ways to hear what I see as our customers' experience is that when you start implementing these techniques, there's 2 or 3 things that happen, right? First and foremost, there's a huge amount of skepticism. How can this program, how can this software kind of make recommendations that sometimes even some of our experienced people can't make? Well, the short answer is learn from a lot of this information that's out there. So we kind of put that in the process and get going, right? So that's point number 1. Point number 2 is the success. Believe it or not, there's so much low-hanging fruit. When I talk about proactive selling, the ability to recommend more items to our customers, but natural, right? If you should think about that. And so you start seeing implementations, or you start seeing a customer benefit from the wins in terms of basket size increase as the number of line items increase per order. You see number of orders per year increasing because you're going systematically to each customer again and again. And so the ROI on these implementations is quite high because there's a ton of ability to go extract value in terms of what you've not done before. So the answer is that there's a lot of benefits you can gain. You just have to start somewhere and start quickly.
Hey, Vivek, I just want to add one small thing to this one. If we look into the maths behind all these things, these are not new. We have been hearing about this math like from 40s, 50s, 60s, everything was that. But what has made the difference is the processing power, the scale at which the data can be processed now. So as an individual, we can hardly probably remember last month what we did. But now we have seen with our customer, we can really look into the data history of like last 30 years, 20 years. And the machines can figure out the pattern in matter of hours. And that's where I think the power of AI is manifesting itself.
True.
Yeah.
I actually always say that to your point, there's no chance something like this would have existed before the cloud revolution. We started harnessing huge amounts of compute power and storage to Lalit's point. I think that's a really important aspect of the reason for the success. Another question, what's the biggest failures reason that you see? And I think it's a combination of three things. What we see quite often, believe it or not, is that people aren't simply ready for this change, right? When I say ready is what we call a skill-will gap, right? Sometimes people don't have the skills, sometimes don't have the will to kind of do this, apply this technique, apply this technology. Sometimes it's both, and then it's a complete disaster. Sometimes people take it just very lightly, like, oh, this too shall pass, right? And I have to say that people who live the this too shall pass mindset are going to get run over, like the old Roadrunner cartoons that we all grew up watching, right? So those are the big things that we see. And if you listen to the subtext behind my answers, it's a lot of it is people-oriented. There's some process-oriented issues as well. People just aren't set up for this proactive selling. Believe it or not, we all talk about it, but very few people are set up for this thing. Another question here. Yes, hopefully the hype of GPT will help with executive skepticism. And yes, Kevin, let's use this to advantage to do this. I mean, I think that's one of the biggest advantages of this hype from ChatGPT is getting people aware. You'd be surprised. I mean, maybe you're not surprised, Kevin. The amount of people who are talking about finding ways to use it for some pilot or the other, right? Now, the biggest question is, as we've all seen, I hope it gets out of pilot purgatory and makes it to real applications. As Lalit said, we're actually experimenting on the side with a bunch of little application ideas to take this technology and harness it for our customers' benefit. So we'll be able to get it out there. But to your point, Kevin, take advantage of this hype because it's not going to last too long and come too often, right? So that's it. So we had 4 questions. Anything else in the audience before you go any further? I know it's 11:30 our time. We said we're going to kind of try to wrap it up in 30 minutes. I want to be true to our word on 30 minutes. Any last questions? Anybody in the audience? If not, we're going to try to end the show here. You have this QR code in front of you. If those of you are interested in kind of seeing if there's any what your maturity levels are in your organization, please feel free to take this image and go to the website, get the QR code questionnaire survey. It's a self-administered survey. We're also able to come out there and kind of do an assessment based on a more comprehensive analysis of data and data quality and so on and so forth. But we're more than happy to come out and answer any questions. By the way, if you have any questions, write it to info@entytle.com, or you can write to me directly at vivek.joshi@entytle.com. With that, folks, thank you very much. This is supposed to be a quick, short, and sweet webinar. Thank you for your participation. We appreciate it. And